Congratulations, you're the proud parent of several miserable versions of yourself, each one a living, breathing what-if spawned from the tangled hairball of your life's worst decisions. Welcome to the Altars, where the only thing worse than dying alone on an irradiated alien planet is surviving it, with 8 alternate universe versions of yourself, all bickering, moping, and occasionally shanking one another mid-binge watch. The Altars doesn't put you in a survival mode, it throws you into cosmic therapy sessions, where you're the therapist, you're also the roommate, and you're also the cook. And you guessed it, a less emotionally stable version of you is also you. A group therapy session with knives and sci-fi. And it actually works. So here's Jan Dolsky. Not a soldier, not a genius, just a mining grunt with a name that sounds like he should be fixing your satellite dish, not juggling alternative realities. You see, Jan is unfortunately crash-landed on a planet where sunlight's basically a middle finger to life, and the only safe space is the ever-shrinking shadow cast by your unicycle tire-shaped base. Luckily, though, Jan's got a special ace in the hole. He's got Repidium, the magical element that's basically quantum duct tape. It lets you rip versions of yourself out of the multiverse, copies of Jan shaped by their life choices, split timelines, and possibly that one night he didn't say no to karaoke. These are not clones, though. These are fully realized, emotionally unhinged, highly specialized versions of you, each with their own memories, skills, and enough trauma to fill a console warrior Reddit thread. The game leans hard into the themes of identity, memory, and the butterfly effect, but this isn't some poetic reflection piece. It's quantum psychodrama, where your biggest threat isn't the environment, it's yourself. All of you. Altars is coming out from 11-bit studios for the PC, Xbox, on Game Pass as well, and on the PlayStation systems. Let's get into it. Subscribe if you like reviews. The gameplay is a tangle of time management, survival logistics, resource micromanagement, and personality crisis simulator. At its core, the game is about staying one step ahead of the sun, because the sun here, like I said, isn't warm and inviting. It is a death ray. You have a couple days to perform whatever missions you need to do, and then you gotta roll forward to just beat the dawn. The entire base is mobile, wheel-shaped. It's a monstrosity that you pilot away from the death ray, always being forced to stop to go through, over, under, or around the planet's natural and sometimes unnatural hazards. And for a man who pronounces his name like Jan, it actually makes sense that he never gets any sleep and decides that when his crew are all killed, you know what? I'm gonna bring in the best worker version that I could possibly get, and that's me. Each of the Jans takes on jobs, has ones they're good at and bad at, and situations that they just can't handle. You are creating other yous, plural. Every altar is a sentient split from your past, spun off because at one point you didn't kiss Karen, or you did, and you took that crap refinery job. It's like looking back at your old high school yearbook, pulling the person out of it, and handing them a job and all the emotional baggage. And these guys are not blank slates. They come with their own issues, real ones. One's great at science, but can't hold a conversation without HR being there. And another may be happy-go-lucky, a work golem who just needs food and a table and a place to sit and watch a show. You're not managing stats, you're managing coworkers who are you, but worse. Resource gathering kicks everything off. You're on the clock. Every second the real world is a minute in time, run out of time, and nighttime creeps up and tries to kill you. You'll see resources that you need to use and build everything in the game world. Dorms, greenhouses, workshops, and the decidedly gross-named womb where new altars are basically born. You consistently trade time for safety, safety for progress, and progress for just yet another random emergency that derails your plans. Just one more pylon ends up being just one more night in the sack when you get irradiated and end up being saved by the other altars. You're going to assign your altars tasks. You got to have them make food, repair modules, build new equipment, and every damn time they're going to saunter to their post like it's on a Sunday morning stroll through a foggy park. Meanwhile, you're sprinting doing 3 jobs and just muttering to yourself, you know what, I'll do it myself. Also, literally everything in this title is a trade-off. Build a bigger workshop, heavier ship. Need more fuel? Mine more organics. Want faster on-foot travel? You'll need pylons, which need materials, which needs trips out into the glowing death soup, and means more storage, which means a heavier ship. And that cycle continues, as I talked about in the preview. Luckily, you're not defenseless. Well, maybe you are. You have a suit that has the stamina of a friggin' Victorian lady with a corset that's too tight, which is gonna leave you huffing fumes before you even reach a recharge station until you or the other you that embrace the nerd and sciences the shit out of everything can upgrade it, or upgrade your grapple hooks, your energy connection pylons, or give you defenses against the world's stranger hazards. That day-night cycle is really where it spirals into beauty and balancing these off of each other. No matter what, you're going to work by day or what's left of it, then everyone's going to shuffle back into the base at night, either to sleep, fight, eat, or mentally collapse into a social room. Sometimes you get storms that show up early and screw your entire timeline. There are many day hazards, and you got to consistently be on top of everything, repairing the different modules, and if you don't, hey, people die. Didn't check to make sure that the refinery had switched off so it didn't just eat up some minerals? People die. Every single problem, every issue, consistently eating away at time or your crew. Inventory management is another one. It is here all the time, consistently shifting what goes where, why it's there, and whether it's even useful anymore. The base is a mess of interconnected modules that follow a different style of Tetris from hell logic. A round shape means you're perpetually realizing that nothing square fits. Need to build an infirmary? Better be ready to shift 10 other modules just to wedge it into this awkward curve near the kitchen. If one of your characters is bitching about hot bunking with somebody else, then you have to build them a separate room, and that takes space. All the while you're doing this and taking on different tasks to get you through whatever place that you've stopped at. And that's where the exploration definitely comes in. It's almost meditative. Grapple up ravines, laser blast barriers, investigate strange anomalies, and maybe, just maybe, find a new resource node without dying. Dangerous spots consistently offer either shallow deposits of needed materials that you can mine instantly, or deeper wells of gold mine planet juice that you have to plot out, find exactly where that particular vein goes, and build a mine on top of it. You can send all of the altars out to different places that you've built for them to mine, but they don't do the exploring. That's you. And when it comes to the altars themselves and handling them, well, mistakes are probably going to be made. And that means you're going to have to take a quick trip to the quantum computer, open it up, and look at that capillary-like system of the many time branches that it can see, major decisions your yawn's taken and the others did not, which results in different jobs and life choices, and choose which one to bring in. Spending money that's called Repidium here. You bring them in, hoping they don't stroke out on the table, and try to figure out how to get them to get along with everybody else on the team. And trust me, if you're pushy, they are pushier. They have the sad fact of being copies of you, but also in a world that they aren't happy in. For example, bad choices you've made and you've come to grips with, they haven't, or they've made different one, fostering rebellion one moment and team building exercises the next. When they want to talk to you, you always get a little radio call and then you go and find them. But choices that you make in these discussions are going to result in some emotional changes throughout. Something bringing a bit of begrudging acceptance will other times vacillate between pissy as hell and pragmatic, depending on who you're talking to, or within the same 40 seconds. It's nice because even though you're the character and these are characters of your character and everybody's split off, you have that core timeline and you can remember it, even go back and look at the choices you made versus the choices they made before you decide to talk to them, if you get a warning at least. Be aware, though, they do add a huge number of tasks to your already lengthy task list. And that means sometimes you're going to have to spend needed resources to make one a pair of barbells because he likes to get yoked, while another one doesn't seem to like eggs at all and won't make the omelet in the morning for everybody else. I'm just joking. I wish it was omelets. It's actually a funky-ass gruel that I'm pretty sure is just some kind of mold, until you make better food or you build up a module that lets your botanist actually grow some stuff for people. And if you don't, well, that continually ends up eating away at the happiness of all of the characters. When it comes to the survival elements of this game, there aren't a great number of surprises. You're going to understand exactly what to do in most of the places. I will say that when engaging in a lot of the larger maps, it could be confusing and having to jump between the different settings, and consistently balancing all of this as just one major character who's really the captain and everybody else is captains who aren't captains but think they are, but just don't have the ability to actually make any decisions, can be a bit off-putting at first, but once you buy into it, it seems to work. I will say what doesn't work as well is the UI. There are a lot of times when you're in one place where you want to see the map of the world itself, and instead you're just going to see the map of your base, and you actually don't want to do that and jump to the different locations to figure out exactly who's doing what. Can be a little bit messier than I would like. Working through it is not something you're going to have to do when it comes to the visuals. Altars is what happens when really clinical sci-fi design, desolate alien loneliness, and an uncomfortable amount of moist air all comes together for a late night crisis. The moment you step outside that rolling monowheel you live in, everything hits incredibly well to feel like its own game, but also somewhat familiar. Claustrophobic tunnels, fog-choked valleys, and alien fields that look beautiful from a distance but whisper, we're gonna cook your balls if you come over here when you get close. It's ethereal, it's oppressive, and it's straight up magnificent. This is the kind of exploration I do like in titles like this. Every pretty spot is a hazard waiting to happen, or a happy moment of pause before you look around and try to figure out, can I climb there, or put a pylon there, or can I use this as a quick travel spot? Deciding between the far less amount of a shallow deposit versus that orange haze and radiation that shifts across a deposit that is, well, unfortunately, incredibly radioactive, but is going to pay off. That prettiness ends up being a subtle reminder that you're slowly being turned into astronaut jerky. Organic vents spew bioluminescent gas, mineral deposits glow like alien lava lamps, and all of the time you are listening to these guys chirping off in the background, pissy that you didn't do something. Inside the base, that flips, that design changes. Everything's modular, symmetrical, too clean to really feel fully lived in, yet scuffed up enough to suggest that someone cried into their protein mush the night before. Your dorms feel stacked and industrial. The captain's cabin looks like an IKEA showroom for a divorcee, and the quantum computer is that monolithic, in a way almost ominous tech right behind that red glowing orb. It's a strong visual identity. I think it's a great sci-fi identity in and of itself. I loved the way the altars looked during the previews, and it continues to look that way. The different copy paste that you would expect to see works quite well here. There's genuine variation, glasses, posture, uniform scuffs, and colors, enough to at least instinctively have you go, oh yeah, that's angry yawn, or science yawn, or socially inept yawn, and whatever the hell that yawn is yawn. You're probably yawning right now. Now, performance-wise, Altars is quite good. I was surprised. Without DLSS, it was above 60 almost all the time on a range of hardware, from 2080s to the 4090. It ran solid at 1080p, 1440p, and 4K, commensurate with whichever card you're talking about. All of them clocked in with pretty strong frame rates across the board without really requiring DLSS for the most part, though it does support DLSS and FSR for upscaling and frame gen. You can tweak a solid range of graphical settings, and even the lower ones really keep the visual tone intact thanks to a strong design. So don't expect to turn down all the settings and go, oh, you know what, this doesn't look good at all. It still looks alien and dangerous enough, even if it is on a super low power system. For example, the game's minimum requirements are a damned AMD Ryzen 1500 and a GTX 1060. But not everything sparkles here. Lip syncing is just, it's almost flat out busted. Characters speak like they're dubbed in really low budget sci-fi drama, and the sync is off enough to yank you really right out of a moment, because the game's camera often also locks you into a direct face-to-face convo, not necessarily over a shoulder, but sort of over the side, over the shoulder. Combine that with a press to continue dialogue pacing that reminds me of the campfires in Expedition 33, and it becomes a lot more noticeable than it should be. It's not completely immersion breaking or shattering, but at different times when they're given a speech about something, they're really trying to tell you something important, it is immersion wobbling. Also, yes, this is Unreal 5, and it does build shaders at the start. A stunning looking game, and many times, stunning sounding. It's very high quality, from the subtle droning or quantum bass to the bassy roar of geomagnetic storms outside. The game's audio does a tremendous job telling you of what's going on as well, if you didn't notice right away. A deeply passive-aggressive character that reminds you in stereo how close you are to screwing up absolutely everything, especially when exploring. Now, during the storms, metal shutters groan, internal lights flicker, warning alarms pulse, and there's that special kind of feeling of doom that's usually reserved for almost submarine movies. I not only liked the sample choices that they picked for this, but I also just liked the way everything was put together and how informative it was when you were out there, and even when you were inside. The ability for you to hear the sound of a module that's actually shorted out from your elevator 3 or 4 or 5 rooms away was quite useful, especially because that UI at times I didn't necessarily love. Now, the score is composed by the creator of the excellent soundtrack of This War of Mine, and it works to wrap everything pretty well, nice and tidy. It's never really over the top. It's thoughtful. It's sometimes haunting, like a piano trying to remember what happiness felt like. So it just gets, close enough. But when the sun creeps up, the storms hit, the music swells up just enough to make you realize, yes, your timeline is collapsing, and no, you probably aren't prepared. Voice acting is a little less fine, so Yon's delivery is pretty solid. It's not award-winning, but it's fairly grounded, and it's going to require a lot from one person to deliver so many different ways in which the single character, usually with the same accent, is going to end up saying things. There's a weird dialogue pacing here where everybody talks like they're reading subtitles on a broken vending machine. There are times when a heartfelt memory is being shared and you're just sitting there waiting for the next chunk of dialogue to be unchoked from the actor's digital lungs. But the sheer novelty of listening to yourself try to outtalk yourself does make for some outstanding weirdness. It's like arguing with your reflection, only the reflection took a slight improv class and now insists that you're the reflection. I actually found myself for the first time in years genuinely wondering not only about the characters and their lives on screen and keeping them alive, but also about their lives prior, which they didn't actually have, but for some reason I bought into it. To find yourself wondering about experiences far past the examples that you're given delivered to you is a great indication, I think, of something wonderful there. But while those experiences sound fun, was the entire game? I won't dance around this. It's not a perfect game. It's brilliant. It's deeply weird. It's occasionally clunky, stressful, often not because the game's actually trying to do so, but because there's a finicky system. It's also wildly original. Here's the kicker, though. It is always fun throughout that. Not in a, oh my God, explosions and power fantasies kind of way, but more like you're arguing with a quantum manifestation of your own self-doubt while the oven explodes and somebody else named you is crying in the kitchen anyway. What's fun about that? Well, it's the way the systems work, and it's the chaos, the way all these intricate gears click into place just long enough for you to think, I got this before a magnetic storm hits, and your refinery eats all the ore, and Angry Yon declares martial law because somehow you didn't tuck him in at night. The game's consistently balancing you on the knife's edge of control, survival strategy, resource logistics, and emotional warfare wrapped in an all-around feeling of self-reflection. It's not a typical survival game, that's for sure. In fact, the systems are nowhere as deep as many survival games we get, but you're not going to be punching rocks anytime soon, which is also nice. But it does frustrate. Deep into the story, for example, you're given a choice that feels like it's a big deal, and then it reveals itself to not really be a choice. Or you have someone else who is doing the thing that you said you didn't want to do. It's clever in concept, but it really hurts that you've been playing out a lot of your decisions, and you discover that a couple of them are just scenic routes to the same emotionally bruising outcome. That didn't happen a ton of times, but it did happen once or twice. The survival mechanics are also less sandboxy than they first appear. This isn't a playground. It's a test, and while the gameplay loop is rewarding, assigning altars, building modules, moving the base, cooking up another version of yourself because therapist Jan started crying again, and because of that, it's also rigid. You often feel like you're reverse engineering a puzzle somebody else already solved rather than carving your own messy path through disaster. Luckily, it alternates there. But then when the game hits, and there are some scenes in this, a moment that I think is so perfect, so dark, so personal, or just absolutely what the hell that it cuts through a lot of my gripes. One of them involved a conversation between two alters that spiraled into something that was so heavy, I just sort of stared at the screen controller in hand, unsure if I should continue or just let them continue their discussion. Another moment gave me a punch of regret over what I had actually done. I actually whispered, damn, as the screen continued on. That's the thing. The altars is packed with those moments. Not all of them work. Not all of them are clean. But the ones that do, they are insane. They stick with you. And I got to admit, one of them has stuck with me enough that I actually thought about going back and changing that, because that's one of the game's prime ideals, is that you can go back. You can load an old save and go back, and it'll actually show you the choices you made on the prior time you played through that location. So you can actually do that if you wanted to. I'm usually a guy who likes to go through it just one time, but this time I ended up loading again, or died and decided I was going to go check something out, and found myself really rethinking a lot of those choices. The Altars is a game about being your own worst enemy, your own lifeline, your own therapist, your own handyman, and occasionally, possibly your own murderer. It does stumble, but it never really ends up falling apart. And in fact, any idiosyncrasies I found ended up being completely removed by the excellence of story moments, as well as just the awesomeness of trying to get everybody on the same overall decision matrix, especially when they're all just as headstrong as my main character was. Speaking of headstrong, let's talk about some ratings. So this one's a little bit different. You can buy it. Of course, it's on Game Pass as well, so you can choose. If you have an Xbox or a PC, you can just get it that way. I would say this is really worth getting right away. I don't see any issue with this. I didn't have necessarily any bugs that I can even remember are propped up or cropped up. There were a couple issues there with stuttering here or there. There were some times where I noticed that the AI wasn't doing something I wanted it to do. That usually just either required me to order them again, take them off of the spot, and then put them back. But it really didn't happen very much. The game has the occasional technical blunder here or there, and I wish the voices were delivered a little bit more slickly, especially because of the story this is trying to tell. But just like the preview, this felt like something special to me, and it turned out to be. I ended up buying into Jan's story, the different characters, what was going on, and the mystery, and I will definitely be playing this one again. I hope you guys enjoy it. If you want to play something again, check out the videos at the end of this video that'll show you a video. It's sort of like my own version of Altars. You can jump in, check other reviews. You can subscribe, check out the podcast, whatever. Peace out. Enjoy the rest of your week.